Ready whenever you are, Mr. Kevin. What do we...
Sweating.
Yeah.
I'm going to show you how to build a 4-in-1 reptile infirmary unit. Often when our animals are getting, if they're sick or they're not doing well, sometimes our go-to is to try to rush them to a vet. And in this environment, you often have vets that really are not experienced with exotic reptiles, and they don't really know much about what they're dealing with. And a lot of times when you bring your animals in, and they look at the animal and then they leave the room, they're running to a book. So I'm going to show you the book that's inside me and things that you can do at your house, and you can do this in a pinch, and it's pretty neat. This is awesome. So right here, I'm using my new ZoomEd controller. This thing has multiple thermostats, proportional thermostats, as well as humidity control, which you can attach it to a fogger or whatever. And it's got a controller. I'm going to show you that in a minute. But this thing is excellent. It's also very powerful. So each one of these little thermostats, they're all built into this one unit. They can do, I think it's 1,000 to 1,500 watts per. This thing is ridiculous. This has multiple thermostats on it. We even have proportional thermostats, which is using a triac, and that literally dims down the heat source. So the heat source is constantly, there's a feedback loop, and it's always monitoring itself. But this little thing, this hand control, this deals with multiple thermostats and humidity and cooling, and it's all in this one power center.
Not sponsored by ZoomEd.
No, this is, guys, this is just, I'm trying to show you guys something that I'm excited about. I do like a lot of ZoomEd products, but this thing is nifty. Okay, so I'm going to show you guys how to build this. This is pretty nifty. All right, the core guts of this. Very, very important. What we're going to do, we're going to take a large container and fill it with a volume of water, and we're going to create a subfloor. In this case, I'm using 3D printed perches, and I actually have a volume of water, and I use a submersible fish heater. Can you see that, Donny?
Oh no, we can't see the fish here. All right, now we can.
This is a 200 watt heater. I'm only dealing with maybe about 10 gallons of water, but the trick is, if I'm going to use a fish heater, and they're very inexpensive, my favorite ones are the plastic ones or the titanium ones, but in this case I'm using a glass one, but it's a 200 watt heater, so I want something that can bring this water bath up to temperature. And then what I have is I have the probe of my thermostat in the water bath. And what I do, I set my heater, in this case it's going to be 88 degrees. So I set that temperature to 88 degrees. Then I go and take my thermostat that this heater is plugged into, and I set that for 89 degrees. And that is, it's a backup strategy. So in case this heater all of a sudden just goes full blast, I still have the thermostat which is going to control this. So it's a redundant system, but it's really great. My subfloor, the water is going over it a few inches. And so what I do, I take my container of whatever, and I'm going to put that in there, okay? And now what happens is, this bin is now in the water bath. So the temperature of this water, which would be 88 degrees, is now affecting this bin right here. So if I have a snake that has a dry shed, what I would do, I'd put this snake in a bath, and I generally put the water about halfway up its body. And so if it has a dry shed, or it's dehydrated, or it has mouth rot or whatever, I'm going to leave it in this solution. And you don't want to make the water too deep where the snake is sitting, because if the water's too deep, the animal panics. We want this animal very, very comfortable. We want to actually reduce its stress. So I have one container now in a bath inside a heated unit, and now I have the animal itself, who, look at how he keeps creeping towards me because he's wondering what I'm doing. Don't you have to be good? I know. You just have to let him figure it out. So this animal is very, very comfortable in that, and I can leave this snake easily in this bath for 7 days. So a lot of people don't actually think, wow, I can actually leave my snake, or some cases lizards, in water for long periods of time. So what actually happens is, if you're keeping the water clean, the one critical thing you need to do is you visit the snake and you're trying to make sure the water that it's in is clean, it's free of any kind of, if you have a kind of wound, like if you remember one of the videos we just did with the prolapsed cloaca, I had that animal for days in a volume of water just like this, and it was being controlled where I controlled the temperature to 88 degrees. And I leave this animal in that bath and I'm changing the water. What is actually happening now is the 88 degrees is a really good core temperature, 88 to 90 degrees for a tropical python or boa. And what that's doing is it's optimizing its immune response. By putting it into water, I comfortably heat the core temperature, so not the surface temperature, but the core internal body temperature, and I bring it up where I'm optimizing its metabolism and its immune response. So 88 to 90 degrees is really good. Temperatures above 95 degrees, core temperatures for a boa, certainly a king snake, is actually, we're heading towards being lethal. So if I took a snake like this and I put it in a bath of 100 degrees, as its core temperature approaches 100 degrees, its life is nearing its end. So a core temperature of 100 degrees could be lethal. Certainly a king snake or whatever, that could definitely be lethal. So remember one thing. So if I have bearded dragons, I have savanna monitors, water monitors, uromastics, and I'm talking about a basking temperature of 120 degrees, they will visit the 120 degrees, they'll get their body temperature up to where they want quickly, and then they leave that. That's called thermal regulation. But if I immerse this into a water bath, and I said, well, they like a hot basking spot of 120, why don't I do it that? You're going to kill it. All that's doing is that animal may still want to manage a core temperature of 95 degrees, 98 degrees, but when we go above 95 degrees in a lot of tropical species, you're getting them into a very, very uncomfortable state. Okay, so, all right, so if I had an animal that has mouth rot, all right, so mouth rot is going to be necrotic tissue in the mouth. You're going to notice you got all this gunk, you have infected teeth. So what I want to do is I want to supercharge the immune response. So I'm going to put this animal into a water solution, and what I can actually do is I can add a little bit, just a small amount of chlorhexidine or povoiodine, just a small amount. So, and I alternate that. So I'll leave it in a bath for a while of just fresh water, so it's drinking, but periodically I can add antibacterial, antifungal agent into the water, but it's dilute. And what that's doing is it's basically helping the immune response deal with the pathogens, like the bacteria in most cases, that are affecting the problem. And what we're also doing is we're helping the mucus lining heal. Another good little trick. Do you know that you could take a store-bought vitamin C tablet and ascorbic acid, and I can actually take, you know, it depends on the size of the snake, and it's not going to be lethal or anything like that, but I can literally take that tablet and put that down the back of the snake's throat. So I might put, I might give this snake 100 milligrams of vitamin C, and I can do that like every day for days. What that's actually going to help do, it's going to help the mucus lining heal. It's also going to make the blood stream more acidic, and that's going to make it a little bit less comfortable for invasive pathogens. So mouth rot is not a disease. It's a symptom of a situation. There could be some kind of trauma physically to the snake's face. It could also exacerbate like a problem with care. So your husbandry parameters are lacking, or maybe there needs to be a couple tweaks, or the animal's in a cage where it's able to damage its face. So if I put the animal into a situation like this, I have ample air holes, and I'm doing this, and I put it inside my chamber, and I put it in a very quiet place. What I'm doing is I'm reducing stress. If I were to take the same animal and put it into its normal cage, and I give it the proper heat, well, I'm now depending that that animal is actually going to go over, it's going to constantly thermoregulate to manage its core temperature. I'm kind of fixing the problem. I'm actually establishing the core temperature that I want, a tropical boa or a python, which would be 88 degrees. Could be 90 degrees, but right there we want to really jack up that immune response. So now the snake doesn't have to go through the struggles. Well, I want to heat up, but I want to hide. So the animal might go and want to hide in its hide box because there's something in that environment that's scaring it. So the animal might go to a cooler area, or might be forced into a situation where it doesn't like it. This, we've kind of taken away all those elements. We're putting it into a situation, and it's all about your core temperature. It's not your surface temperature. We want, after a couple hours of this animal in a water solution, its core internal temperature has now come up to the temperature of this. We've reduced the stress. We're changing the water out. So if it has mouth rot, we're getting some necrotic tissue. We're going to clean that out. We're going to get fluid going through that animals. You can put a little bit of antibacterial solution that I was talking about, and that can fix it. Dry sheds. This is a great way to deal with dry sheds. Just leave the snake like this for days. A week, no problem. They're actually really good for that. So let's say I was dealing with belly burn. So I have a burn, a thermal burn, because remember, snakes don't really have much receptors on their bellies to actually determine temperature. I think it's more so on their backs. And this is anecdotal information that I've kind of allocated in my mind. But sometimes snakes, when they're in a cold environment, they'll go to a hot spot and they'll hug that hot spot and they can burn. So it basically, that temperature exceeds the tolerance of that tissue and actually starts damaging the tissue. And you start having a burn. And in some cases, I've seen thermal burns where it actually perforates into the body cavity, and that's horrific because once you get pathogens, different kind of coliform and environmental bacteria on the outside, inside of the body cavity of the animal, especially if it's a gram-negative bacteria, because gram-negative largely are the bacteria we're concerned about with reptiles, with cold-blooded animals. Some gram-positive, but the majority of the pathogens, the bacteria and stuff, we're interested in is gram-negative, so we never want that inside the body cavity. So this animal has a thermal burn, and I put it into these water solutions. It doesn't have to get forced onto a hot area, which could actually further hurt the tissue. It's probably dealing with the pain and that stuff like that. So if I put it in the water and I'm constantly changing out the water and I'm putting a very dilute solution of antibacterial or antifungal in that, it's helping the tissue heal. It's sloughing off all the damaged tissue, and we're basically allowing the animal to maximize its immune response.
What do you got there, Coach?
Okay, so here's a really great trick, and we want to probably do a video literally on all the intensity of reptile egg incubation. But to cover a couple things, when we incubate reptile eggs, so this is a water monitor. So this little guy is hatching today. This takes 6 to 7 months. And it's 6 to 7 months of proper conditions all during incubation. And a really good trick, I'll take eggs like this and I'll put them into a hatchite, which is essentially, it's a perlite and water crystal media, and then I put the eggs into that bed, and then I will put a lid on top of this, and I'll have only a few air holes. And then what I do, I take this and I put this inside another container, which is a water bath, right? This water bath right there. Can you see that? Mm-hmm. And what that's doing is the moisture and humidity inside the water bath is managing and maintaining the humidity inside this, and it's making it available to the eggs. So if I wanted to set up a very quick little incubator, I could take a bin like this and I put my media in there at appropriate humidity, and I put my eggs in there, I put a lid on there, I have a couple air holes in there, and then I can float this into my infirmary unit, and I can then just manage the temperatures, whatever it is. If I'm managing, let's say python eggs, ball python eggs, water monitor eggs. So water monitor eggs, 86 degrees is rather optimal. So I would have to keep water in this, and I could just let this whole bin sit inside that water, and maybe once a month I'm going to add some water to it. And I also want to manage the lid. I don't need a lot of oxygen exchange. So I have 2 air holes right here. I can easily put some tape over that, but I can then do a locking lid, and I now have my control unit, which is managing this. But if it's ball pythons, it might take 60 days. And what's really great about this, the available humidity in the air is available to the eggs trapped inside that bin. All right, so this ball python just laid eggs last night. I have a couple different ways to actually manage this. I want to put this into an environment where there is no real intense heat. I want to bring the average mean temperature. So I want something, if I were going to leave her there to incubate her eggs, I don't really need to, but if I wanted to, I could just literally take this bin, lock that. Now I take this soaking boa out, and she's comfortable like that. And I would just give her a little water dish. But what I would recommend doing is I would actually remove the snake from the eggs. So pythons that have a maternal relationship with this clutch of eggs, what I'd do is I'd actually remove her from the eggs and I'd wash her with a very dilute Dawn or just dishwashing detergent. And what you're doing is you're stripping this chemical, which is her bond to her egg, which tells her, sit there and incubate your eggs and whatever. So if I wash her and I put her in a new clean cage, the hint and the smell of the eggs is now gone. So she then quite quickly goes back to, hey, I'm hungry, we can get food to her, because the process of her incubating her eggs is a little bit stressful on her, or maybe even a lot stressful, because she's high alert. So if I keep walking into the room and there's a lot of activity, she's going to constantly be awake, and hey, are you going to come here to steal my eggs and all that? So if I remove her, put her in a situation where there's no smell of the eggs, and I incubate the eggs separately, I'm probably being more kind to her, and I also want to get calories back in her, so I'm going to start feeding her. I can get her generally 13 to 16 meals, and she's right back into reproductive mode about a year later. And that gets her core weight up, and it gets the follicle growth. And also, did you know that the follicular growth for next year's eggs is quite soon decided? When I take her off these eggs and then I start feeding her, if I give her a good ample food, it's more likely that there's going to be more ovum to develop next year if she has optimal food allowance now. And I really, really appreciate your commentary. I'm enjoying reading the comments. You guys are great. Even though we don't have the biggest viewership, I really feel that our audience, you guys are very involved. You're very interested, and I love reading the comments and seeing what you're saying, and your kindness. You guys are awesome. And we're building our channel, kind of trying to be a little bit responsible, teaching you guys, not just doing fantastic things. I know it would help blow up our channel. We're trying to get there, but we really want to have good content. So if you guys agree with this, please tell us that. Thank you guys.
I gotta turn my camera on, dude.
You didn't turn your camera.